What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the same. And right now, I'm feeling like 100 grand.
You are listening to Inspired Insider with your host, Dr. Jeremy Weisz.
Dr. Jeremy Weisz here, founder of InspiredInsider.com, where I talk with inspirational entrepreneurs and leaders. And this is going to be an exciting episode with Matt Fraser. You could check him out at MeetMattFrasercom. He has a TV show on E, which we're going to talk about in his books. But before I formally introduce Matt, I always like to talk about other episodes people should check out on the podcast. And so you could check out, my past guests have include co-founder of Pixar. That was an interesting episode. And the founder of Atari. Both of them have Steve Jobs stories, which are pretty cool. Also, one that relates to kind of this episode more, I did an episode with Perry Marshall, and Perry Marshall wrote the book Evolution 2.0. And it's sort of, does God exist, right? And it's not my typical episode, but it's really fascinating. And it kind of, bleeds into what we're going to talk about today. And before we get to it, this episode is brought to you by Rise 25. And at Rise 25, we help businesses give to and connect to their Dream 100 relationships. And how do we do that? We run your podcast. For me, the number one thing in my life is relationships. I'm always looking at ways to give to my best relationships. And I found no better way to do that than over the past decade to profile the people and companies I most admire and, shout from the rooftops what they're working on so other people can find out more. So if you've thought about podcasting, you should. If you have questions, you go to rise25.com or email us at support@rise25.com to learn more. Matt Fraser is America's top psychic medium. If you don't know what that is, he is going to explain it. We're going to dive deep into it. He's also the star of the reality TV series Meet the Frasers on E. It is very entertaining. You have to check it out. Him and his family are awesome. So check that out. And he's author of When Heaven Calls, and author of We Never Die, and Secrets of the Afterlife. And currently he's on a nationwide live event tour throughout major cities, and you can get all that information of the live events. He does them via Zoom as well. So if you're like, I can't attend a live event because of whatever reason, there's still no excuse. You can go to MeetMattFraser.com, and that's MeetMatt, MattFraser.com will be linked in the show notes. But I was actually surprised, Matt, of how inexpensive it is. Actually, I was like, he should be charging more. So thanks for joining me.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, I got to tell you something that during the pandemic, it changed everything. I mean, more so now than ever. So many people reached out to me saying, Matt, I've lost someone through COVID, or Matt, I didn't get to say goodbye to my grandmother because I wasn't allowed into the hospital, or Matt, I'm so afraid about this virus. What can you tell me? Is there an afterlife? Is there another side? So during the pandemic, when, everybody went and, really came up with some creative ways and creative things to do at home and be socially distanced, I did the same thing. We started online group readings through Zoom, partnered with Zoom, where literally, people come in a group setting and whatever souls come through, they come through. And I got to tell you, it's been incredible. And the reason why I kept it, just $19 just for one reason. So many people wrote to me and said, Matt, I want to see someone like yourself, but I just can't afford it. And to me, that broke my heart. I think that everybody should have a chance at connecting with a loved one without breaking the bank.
And we're going to dig into the book and what you're doing now, but I do want to give people a sense of what this is and where this, when this first started. And I know this has been passed down from your grandmother, your mom, and you. So maybe one story from your childhood, because this goes back a ways, and you even kind of pushed it away, it seems, in the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, what people don't realize about psychics and mediums, or at least about myself, is I never woke up and said, one day I want to be a psychic medium. It was just the opposite. I started my career as an EMT, where I worked for the World Trade Center in Boston. And if you're not sure what an EMT is, it's an emergency medical technician. And that was my dream. That was my passion. That's what I thought was my calling at the time, was helping people on the physical level. But I literally grew up like that boy from The Sixth Sense, seeing and hearing and feeling the departed. And in the beginning, I was petrified of this. This wasn't something that I wanted to do. It wasn't something that, I felt called to do. It was actually something that I didn't even realize not everybody else could do this. I didn't realize I was a psychic or I was a medium. Growing up, I literally just thought that the house was haunted, and that's what I was experiencing. I never realized that I had a gift or an ability to communicate with people who had died. So for years, I pushed it away.
We'll talk about turning the point where you decided to turn this into a business. But, what are some of the you probably encounter a lot of skeptics, right? And and I was watching one, I think it was on Meet the Fraser, your show, and you said, "Who's a skeptic here?" And your dad actually stood up.
Don't you just love that? Really?
So what are some of the common statements you get from skeptics?
Well, first of all, I love the skeptical ones. I think everybody walks in as a skeptic, right? Especially if you don't know what a psychic medium is, or you've never, had a reading before, you're going to be like, well, wait a minute. Like, for example, I know that one of the biggest questions that I get is it real? How is it that somebody can talk to the dead? How can somebody speak to someone that has died, right? And listen, I'm right there with you. To me, it's crazy. I'll be the first one to tell you that I think that, it's unbelievable. And every day I'm amazed at what it is that I do. And people say to me all the time, well, how is it that you do it? I have no freaking clue, to be honest with you, because it's been happening from when I was a kid. So the same way that I could ask you, how is it that you walk? How is it that you talk? How is it that you move? And you're like, I don't know. I just wave my arms and it happens. It's the same thing with being a medium. These souls come to me. I just can hear them. And that's what's so cool.
What, from your, over the years, who's like the biggest skeptic that sticks out that kind of did a 180 once you started, working?
Oh my God. I'm so glad you asked this question. Michael Clayton. So Michael Clayton was in the NFL, and then literally he went to become a talk show host on Studio 10 in Tampa, Florida. And he did a good morning talk show. He was a good morning talk show host. And literally he did not want to believe, like, in the beginning, like they were even telling me like, oh, Michael kind of doesn't even want like you on the show because like he doesn't really believe in mediums and whatnot and so on and so forth. And literally I went into that TV show, and all of a sudden, the moment that I was there, his friend was coming through, and I started to read him, and you saw him go from skeptical to reserved to, I'm not going to believe this, to next thing you know, doing a full 180 on live television. And all of a sudden it was just incredible because that one video literally touched millions of people. Like, I think right now it's up to 3-point-something million views on YouTube just because of his reaction, just because so many people could relate to him. So many people saw it for the first time. It's like, well, wait a minute. I didn't believe in this until now. And I think that, that reading alone, hands down, is one of my favorites because that's what I want people to walk away from with the experience. I expect everyone to walk in and say, is it real? I don't know. I'm unsure, but I'm going to go and I'm going to try it out. And I love that about my shows. I love when somebody comes to an event or comes to a reading and walks in a skeptic, but leaves being a believer because they walk away with something. They walk away with the knowing that there is life after death. And another reading that I did as well, which was so amazing, is when I was on the television show, The Doctors. That was another one that blew up because, doctors, I got to tell you, medical doctors are the number one skeptics, I feel, because they're so trained in science. And I try to tell them, well, listen, I was an EMT. I believe in traditional medicine. That's what I practice as well. But, I also believe in spiritual practices and spiritual, healing therapy as well. And I remember being on that show, The Doctors, and literally they just said, Matt, do what you do. And I ran out into the crowd and I was just reading people that were there. And in between commercial breaks, Dr. Travis said to me, he goes, Matt, he goes, I got to tell you something. He goes, I can't get over this. He's like, because in medical, we're trained that, when you're dead, you're dead. He's like, I'm so used to writing time of death on that death certificate. He's like, I'm so used to pronouncing people in the ER that seeing this and seeing that there is another side of life to this. He's like, it's just unfathomable. And that's what I love. I love just opening people's minds to that. I'm not looking to prove anything to anyone, but I am looking to open people's minds and show them, listen, there is a possibility of this.
We'll talk about, Matt, too, on when you decided to turn this into a business. But But another cool thing that you do is sometimes you get calls from the police, right?
So it hasn't happened in a long time. It's not the actual police department that calls me because there's no actual police psychics or mediums, but there have been independent investigators and there have been people who work with the police department that have called on time to time, to check up on things, to see if there's a clue, to see if there's, a lead, to see if there's something. That's not my particular forte. And it's actually funny because what people don't realize is that every medium has a specialty. Like some mediums are medical mediums, where they'll be able to tell you, about what's going on in your body. Other mediums are pet communicators where they connect with pets. Some mediums are life psychics where they can tell you what's going to happen in your life. Some are psychic detectives. I'm just a plain old regular medium where I just connect you, with the other side. There have been times when, I have been called by investigators and things like that, but it's not where I really focus my work because I feel like that, even if you can find out who committed the crime, a lot of times there's just not enough evidence or what I've seen to put people behind bars or to find justice. And I think that at the end of the day, the justice needs to be the healing that people get from hearing from their loved ones and not necessarily from finding clues.
Yeah. So at what point, because again, you pushed this off for many years, you didn't want this to be necessarily your profession or made into business. At what point did you decide, I'm going to embrace this and make a business out of this?
Well, so what's really crazy is, like I said, I grew up having this, have this ability of seeing and hearing the departed. It actually was really crazy because my grandmother was a medium and my mom. But when I say that, people always think that I'm talking about, they had a little boutique and they read people and they pulled cards. No. When my grandmother was a medium, my mom was a medium, but they never did it professionally. They never accepted $1. It literally was that sometimes they would see visions, sometimes they would see premonitions. They would only read for close friends and family members. Not many people knew about it. It was not a business. Nobody knew until I came out and talked about it publicly. Just like I said, a few close friends and family members. And the turning point for me was literally, right out of high school. After high school, I was always into medical. Like I always wanted to be, in the medical field. It's the reason why I decided to go and become an EMT. And, I was going through that certification. I was doing really well with it. For the first time in my life, like I was acing everything. I absolutely loved it. And then I was at a crossroads. I'm like, okay, do I want to be like a physician's assistant? Do I want to be a paramedic? Where do I want to go for this? And at the time, all of my friends were going to see psychics and mediums, and they were having really great experiences navigating their life. When they would come back and they would tell me, oh, I went to see this medium and they told me that, I'm going to marry this person. Oh, I went to see this medium and I was told I was going to have 3 kids. And this medium told me I'm going to get into this college. And I didn't apply there, but I did. And then I got in, and they were having these just, profound experiences, especially with a woman out of Boston. And they were like, Matt, why don't you go? And I'm like, you know what? I really should, because I'm like, I don't know what to do with my life. I don't know what to do with, this EMT route, and I don't know whether to stay at my job, whether to work for an ambulance company. Like there was all these questions that I had. So long story short, I went to go and see this medium for the first time. And
it's very meta, Matt, like a medium going to a medium.
Well, I didn't know I was a medium. Don't get me wrong. At that point, I had pushed my abilities away. I wasn't seeing and hearing the departed. I was living a normal life. I felt like I was on my path. And I wanted to see somebody who was actually using their gift, since all my family did was run from it or keep it a secret. So I went to go and see a medium for the first time, and it changed my life because I went there looking to hear one message. I had this whole list of questions prepared, about my life and my future and where I would move and, who I was going to marry and all these types of things. And literally, I got a different reading than all of my friends. And the moment I sat down, this woman looked at me and said, oh, your grandmother's here that passed. And she was a medium. And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, she was. She connected with the departed and whatnot. And she's like, and all of a sudden she started picking up on my past. And she said, well, I see that, you're a medium. And I go, oh, no, I'm not a medium. I'm like, that's not what I am. She's like, well, I see that, back when you were younger, she had these visions that I could see dead people. I says, yeah. I says, when I was a little kid, I'm like, but I'm like, there was something going on with that house. It wasn't me. And she goes, oh no, this is you. So fast forward into the reading, I'm asking her about, okay, well, where do I go from here? Am I going to be a paramedic? Am I going to be a physician's assistant? Am I going to be able to pass the test? I don't know, because, I'm having issues understanding the heart rhythms and all this stuff. And she's saying to me, no, you need to listen to me. That's not what you're going to be. She says, I see you being on television. She says, I see you being a medium. I see people putting powder on your face and cameras showing up at your door and you being on reality TV. And I'm saying to her, I'm like, I think you're reading the wrong cards. I'm like, I think you're reading the wrong person. And it's funny because we were like fighting back and forth with one another. She's telling me, I see you being a medium. I'm saying to her, honey, you're looking at the wrong cards. Like, that's not, I don't know what the hell you're seeing, but you're on the wrong track. And as much as I tried to redirect her into what I wanted to hear, she kept telling me this. And she told me, she goes, listen, she goes, after I left the session, she goes, I just want to tell you one thing. She says, you may have thought that you pushed your abilities away, but they're still there. She says, and if you go home, she goes, and you know, she gave me like this meditation to do and told me all these things. She says, you can get back your ability. And, you know, I went home and I thought about it and I talked to my mom, and my mom confirmed to me that I guess my grandmother back in the day saw the same thing. So I said, you know what, I'm going to try it. So I went home and I meditated and I did what she told me. And then all of a sudden I realized I had this heightened sense of awareness. I was picking up on things, sensing and feeling things like I never saw or felt before. And all of a sudden, for the first time, I felt like I was in control of this ability that I had been pushing away. So from there, I didn't keep it a secret. I started telling friends and family members about it and reading for close friends and family members. And then all of a sudden, it started to turn into a business.
You know, one of your books, Matt, is The Secrets to Unlocking Your Psychic Ability. And, you know, since we get a lot of business, you know, CEOs and business people listening, there is, you talk about this, is like there's intuition, whether it's you're hiring someone or firing someone or something in your business. Talk about what's in that book a little bit, because it sounds like for you, it took a little bit of practice to, you know, get your heightened sense. Like if you take Michael Jordan, like he could be a raw, amazing basketball player, but without the practice and the work ethic, you don't become great. And it sounds like similar in this case.
Well, absolutely. And, you know, I have a lot of clients that are entrepreneurs and that are CEOs. And, you know, I really, you know, talk to them about just that, about trusting their intuition, trusting their own psychic voice, because that's the toughest part, is that here in this world, we have so much self-doubt. We have so many limiting thoughts, limiting self-beliefs, and we're so afraid to take that next risk. We're so afraid to take that next chance. We're so afraid of listening to ourselves. And, you know, our intuition works in a crazy way. Our intuition works like this. Everybody around you might be saying, that's not a good idea. That's going to fail. That's not going to work. You're never going to be able to do that. But your intuition is that one voice inside of you that will tell you that it will. And when you listen to it, you know, all of a sudden you have these breakthroughs that nobody else has. And that's what I want to teach everybody, is that, listen, it's about listening to that inner voice, because the souls on the other side tell me that the one thing that they regret most within life is not taking chances. They regret, you know, not having faith within their self, listening to the crowd instead of listening to that inner voice. And that's the one thing that I never do, is that, you know, I'll never listen to other people. I always listen, you know, to myself, because, you know, we're all being guided. We all are sensing and feeling things that, you know, maybe other people can't see, or it might sound crazy to them. But if we trust it, you know, we'll be led on the journey of a lifetime, just like Walt Disney, just like the woman who wrote the Harry Potter books, you know, where, for example, Harry Potter was one of those companies, that woman that was, that wrote Harry Potter in the beginning. They were taking it off of bookshelves. They were taking it off of stores. You know, it went against Catholic belief systems. People weren't supporting it. Mothers were being outraged, and look where it is today.
Talk about some of the daily practices. I don't know if it's from that book or what you recommend. If someone does want to kind of heighten their sense of intuition in general, what do you recommend people do as a daily practice, or just a practice in general?
One, ask yourself internal questions. When you're debating something, when you're whether it be a contract, whether it be a deal, whether it be, you know, a venture that you're going into, ask yourself questions. How is this going to benefit me in the future? Will it benefit me in the future? You know, is this something that I'm willing to invest in? Ask yourself the questions, because when you do that and you have internal conversations with yourself, you can gauge your feelings. Intuition is a feeling. And where most people are afraid to listen to their intuition is because it's not backed up by facts. You know, in today's world, everybody wants the facts. I'm going to give you an example from my life, right? Because this drives my team absolutely crazy. is I'll say like, okay, like I want to go, I just feel like I need to do a tour and I need to go to, let's say Tampa, Florida, right? And then all of a sudden the numbers come out and they'll be like, well, wait a minute, Matt, you can't go to Tampa, Florida because it's not going to sell out. Well, how do you know that? Okay, well, look, you don't have enough, there's not enough fans in that area to support it on Facebook. There's not enough, people in that area watching your TV show. There's just not enough people there that believe in psychics and mediums, so you shouldn't go. And I'm like, well, no, I just have this feeling we need to go. And they're like, no, like blah, 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 the facts. But then next thing you know, I'm like, listen, I don't care what the facts say. We're going, we're doing this. I just have this feeling. And every time I say I just have this feeling, it works out. Like, for example, that's happened in so many different shows. We go there, it sells out, and everyone's like, well, wait a minute. How could this happen? We have the numbers right here. You don't have the numbers to support that audience, but yet the show sold out. Well, it's because I trust my intuition.
Yeah, they're looking at all the different data points. And sometimes the data doesn't tell the whole story, sounds like.
Absolutely.
Talk about hiring, all right? You do talk in the reality TV series, Meet the Frasers, about hiring family.
Oh, Jesus. Hiring family. I mean, let me tell you something. Anyone who's on here that's listening that knows is that there is no boundary when you have family working for you. And that's just what it is. They think they can do whatever the hell they want. I mean, it's a blessing, but it's also a curse, because no matter how many times you separate business and family, there is no separation. And that's just what it is. Listen, you get in a fight at work, it carries home into the family dinner. It carries home back to your house. Then next thing you know, like, for example, I'm going to give you an example. My mother has come to work for me. I don't know. It was a great idea, but I'll also tell you, it's also a mistake as well, because, like, for example, let me just tell you, I wrote up my mother. I know you might not want to hear it, but it's true. I wrote my mother up, gave her a little pink slip. That was it. She wasn't listening to what the hell I said. I told her, I says, always make sure when you're calling people back, you're calling the company phone. You're calling from the company phone. So this way, if someone calls back, obviously, they can get back to somebody in the office if they have a ticketing question. No, this lady's calling people on her cell phone, on her mobile phone. Next thing you know, they can't get in touch. They have 3 different numbers. They don't know how to get in touch with the office. So I'm like, man, no. Like, we have a phone line. She has a separate phone line installed in her house for that reason, and in the office. I said, you need to call people from this line. Okay, doesn't listen. So finally, after the upteenth time, I said, you know what? You're done. So I gave her the pink slip. I wrote her up. Okay, between me and you, that piece of paper didn't mean nothing. It was just a piece of paper, to show her I was serious. Well, don't you know, F-bombs were flying, which you normally wouldn't do. Obviously no other employee would be able to tell you to go F yourself, but my mother told me to go F myself. And then next thing you know, that night, I'm getting a call from my father, and he's like, Matt, you can't write up your mother. And I said, and where did you come into this situation? So he goes, well, I'm telling you right now, you can't write up your mom. She gave birth to you. So I'm like, what the F does that have to do with how did you come into this business? If my mother worked at Walgreens, would you be calling the store manager saying you can't write up, you can't write up this woman because she didn't do her job? I'm sorry. Appreciate you. I understand you. But in this world, you don't do your job, you get written up. That's just what it is. So this is what we deal with on a daily basis. Some might think that talking to the dead is hard. I think that talking to my family is harder.
So what ended up happening with your mom? Is she, did you invite her back?
Did I what?
Invite her back to continue, or is that?
She was invited back. She was just, she just got a little pink slip. That's all. She just got written up.
You had to send a message.
Had to send a message. Still here in my file folder, by the way. So anytime she starts to act up, I got that little documentation. I say, remember this? Because listen, they want to say things. Sometimes you got to threaten your family. You do. I'm sorry. It's the truth.
I love it. We Never Die, The Secrets of Afterlife. What's a favorite story from the book?
So, oh my God, there's so many. And this book is very different than any other book that you may have read by a psychic or a medium, because I never studied with somebody to learn about, my gifts. Everything that I've learned and that I've learned about the other side, I've learned through talking to the departed. But I think that one of my favorite stories in the book, really is about, and by the way, it's not a book about stories. It's really about questions and answers. So it's about, like, for example, all of the questions that people have asked me throughout the whole pandemic. That's when I wrote this book, was during the pandemic. So every question that people have asked me, for example, what happens to people who pass in a tragic way? What happens if we get married multiple times? Who do we end up in heaven? Who's our soulmate? What if we didn't meet our soulmate here in this world? What about the spirit world? How much can they really see? And I think that, that's one of my favorite questions that I answered in this book, is about how much your loved ones can see, because people always ask me, are they watching me in the shower? Are they watching me on the toilet? Do they have access to that? And the one thing I can tell you is that your loved ones in spirit can see everything that you do. Everything that you do. But they also have the option of tuning in to what they see and what they don't. So for example, what I like to think about, this is how I explain it in the book, is it's like security cameras. We all have security cameras in our house. At least the majority of us do. I do. But I can't tell you the last time I looked at the security cameras. I think the last time I looked at the security cameras in my house were when, I was in Florida just to check up on the cats, to make sure the cats are okay, living and breathing. But, that being said, I have access to those footage. During the day, I could look at the tapes all day long to see what my wife's doing, what part of the house she's in. Is she doing the clothes? Is she cooking? Is she doing this? Is she doing that? Right? But the thing is that I don't do that because, one, I respect her privacy, and two, I really don't care. Well, that's the same thing with your loved ones in spirit. They don't care if you're wiping your ass or if you're going and doing your husband at night. They really don't care what it is. They don't care about that aspect of your life, from what they tell me. I mean, they could be lying to me, but I don't think so, because they don't lie in heaven. What they do care about is seeing the good moments in your life, the celebrations, the birthdays, the get-togethers, that new grandchild that was born. That to them is, gold and a treasure.
I think we have your next book, They Don't Lie in Heaven. That's the next title of your book.
I'm going to take that. I'm going to write that down right now.
Yeah, it came straight from your mouth. The TV show, for a second. A favorite part, the ending of the TV show. Talk about the engagement.
So that was just absolutely incredible to me. The fact that, to even think that moment was captured on television was just so incredible, because it was just, it couldn't have worked out more perfect. Yes, it rained on that day. For those of you who saw the show, it was like crazy. It had this whole big, elaborate engagement being planned outside, and we had to move it inside because of the rain. I flew my family down, but at the end of the day, it all worked out so beautiful. And I think that really sums up, how life is that, there's all different situations that happen. We can't go and we can't change the weather. We can't change we can't change the venue. We can't change the weather. We can't change certain life events. We can only make the best of it. And if we go with the flow and we ride it out, the perfect moment happens. And that's exactly what happened with the engagement.
Man, not everyone likes their readings. There was actually a woman that hated her reading.
What one? Because what the thing is that, as a medium, I got to tell you this. There's a couple things that people don't understand. And some mediums get pissed that I even talk about this, but listen, you either like it or you hate it. And here's the one thing that I've agreed to. It's just a personal law that I go by, is that I'm always going to tell people the truth. I'm always going to say what it is that I sense and feel, even if somebody doesn't want to hear it, and even if they react negatively towards it, because I'm not here to filter the messages. So the one thing I can tell you is that, there are readings where certain souls don't come through, and I can't make someone come through. So let's say you're like, oh, I want to come to this medium and hear from my mom. Well, chances are your mom will come through, but she might not. It all depends on, does she have a message? Does she want to speak to you at that time? Is that soul free and available to come through and speak, right? I can't make somebody come down from heaven. I can't make someone, come through and reach you. And at the same time, I can't make someone come through and talk to you. For example, I was just doing a reading the other day. It was a private reading. And a woman came to me and she was so distraught. She was so stressed out because literally she was going through a divorce with her husband. They had been going through the divorce for 2 years. She was holding on to this relationship because of the fact that, she was hoping that some way, somehow they would end up back together. She didn't want the divorce. It was her husband that wanted the divorce. And she came through looking to hear from her mom for some advice and guidance. And unfortunately, her mom came through during this reading, and her mom had said, listen, unfortunately, this divorce is going through. You can hold on, and you can drag this out in court. You can do everything you can, but this divorce is going to happen. And she was like, well, Matt, you're a medium. My mom's in spirit. You have to tell me, what can I do to change this? And when I was talking to her mom in spirit, the mother said to me, there's nothing you can do to change it. You have to let go. You need to let go of this man. And in fairness, the reading that I did, the mother showed me that her husband had already moved on. He met somebody else. He was looking to divorce her because he was pursuing this new relationship. And she was the one that was in the middle. She was holding on, to him. She wouldn't end this marriage because she didn't want him to move on with this other person. So the mom's advice was to let him go, set him free, wrap up this divorce and live your life. And this woman did not want to hear it. She was pissed. She says, well, I went to all these other mediums and they told me that, to hang on and, he's going to come back. And I said, listen, I can't speak on what other mediums tell you. I can only tell you what your mom is telling me. And she's telling me that unfortunately he's not coming back and that this is what you need to do. And, it was crazy because this at first she was so upset and she was so mad. And she kept saying to me, this isn't what I want to hear. This isn't why I came to you. And I said, well, I can't tell you what you want to hear. That's not what it is, And it's funny because she asked the question to me, somebody doesn't want the reading or doesn't want to listen to the reading when they ask you the same question 10 different ways, right? So they ask you, okay, what is my mom saying about my husband? Oh, well, unfortunately, he's moved on and, he's met somebody new. And okay, well, what does my mom say? Are we getting back together? No, unfortunately, there's not. Well, what if he leaves the woman? Will we get back together? Well, check 5 years into the future, check 10 years into the future. I'm like, listen, unfortunately, this is what your mom is saying. There's no way to change the situation. But as hard as that was as a message for her to hear, I know that this is what she needed to hear to be able to heal. She's stuck in that moment until she changed, moved on, and was able to set him free.
Nice. Matt, I have one last question before I ask it. I want to point people to a couple areas of your website, but I want to give a shout out to Amal Wagner, who introduced us. And she said, Jeremy, when you talk to Matt, if you feel like at the end, or if he feels like at the end, ask him if he sees anyone. And I was like, I'm a little worried to ask that question, but sometimes you just have to embrace the things that make you uncomfortable and worry you. So that will be my last question. But I want to point people to MeetMattFrasercom to check out more. Check out his book, We Never Die, Secrets of the Afterlife. He's also has the book, When Heaven Calls. And then also I mentioned the psychic ability, but his latest and greatest one will say We Never Die. Check it out. Also, he does Zoom readings in group sessions. He also does live ones. So you can check everything out on his website. And of course, the TV show as well, Meet the Frasers. Where else? Are there any other places online or on your website, Matt, we should point people towards?
Well, definitely YouTube, definitely the YouTube channel. So the TV show is more about my life, but on YouTube is where you can find all the readings that I've done. And, it's so amazing. People really go on and just binge watch them because, no reading is the same. Every reading is different. I mean, there's souls that have come through that, were murdered. There were souls that have passed of, suspicious passings. And I think that those are really the ones that people gravitate towards because we all have been in that situation where we lose someone tragically, and to hear, how one family can find hope can inspire us as well.
Yeah. And I think if they go to your website and go to the video page, there's a bunch of videos there. And I think they can click through and find the YouTube channel. It looks like Simply Psychic / videos on YouTube will get them to your YouTube channel as well. But just Google Matt Fraser and you can check all the videos out in there. They're very compelling to say the least. So, so check out MeetMattFraser.com, everything there. So Matt, that's my last question. I'm a little bit of trepidation on my standpoint, but
so there's a couple different souls that are here, and right away I have a soul that's coming through that tell me they passed of a stroke. Who had the stroke?
My grandfather did, yeah.
He's here because right away he's stepping forward, and this wasn't what had killed him because he tells me that he had multiple strokes. Do you know about that?
Yes, he did, yeah.
Because right away he was stepping forward. I actually thought this was your dad because when he was coming through, he showed me that he helped to raise you here in this world. And right away when I'm connecting with him, he keeps saying to me, Matt, he goes, I need to let my family know that I can speak, that I can move, and I can communicate on the other side. Because at the end, he keeps telling me that he couldn't remember. And he says to me that this affected his whole head. Do you understand that?
Yeah.
He says he wants to thank his family for the way that you all kept him alive as long as you possibly could. And more importantly, he tells me that the hardest thing that he wants to apologize for is everything that you had to see. Because he tells me that at the end, there was issues with breathing with him. He says, and please let my family know that I can breathe now that I'm on the other side, because he's acknowledging that. And it's crazy because when I'm speaking to your grandfather, he says to me, thank you for not forgetting about me. Because literally he says to me that he knows that you were busy within life. But he says to me that, you know, even though life could have gotten busy for you, that you would always come back to visit him, to see him, to connect with him. And he says to me that even though there were times when he couldn't respond to talk to you, he remembers all of those moments.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. He did die of a stroke, or he had several strokes.
He tells me, because he says to me, he started off with mini strokes. The way he actually died was, he shows me there was like this clump of this area in his head. And I feel like that, you know, the major stroke that he had at the end was accompanied by those mini that caused his passing.
That's crazy, man.
Yeah, he's here. He also shows me military connection when I'm speaking to him as well. So he was in the military.
My other grandfather was in the military.
Oh, your other grandfather. They're both here. Because what happens is when I'm on that vibration, all the souls will come through. And I also keep seeing visions of a military uniform that's here as well. So no, it's their way of just watching over and guiding you, because we truly never lose anybody. And you know what's also crazy as well? You're going to think I'm insane, but also with your grandfather, there's this dog that had passed. Did your family just lose the dog?
We didn't, no.
Where was the Cocker Spaniel? Who had the Cocker Spaniel?
It may have been my wife's family.
That dog is also there. How crazy. Because I just saw this Cocker Spaniel that's there on the other side. And what's crazy is that, like, when you are married, right, like that family becomes your family. So no, like even like your wife's family, those souls can come through. And what's really cool, and what I talk about in my book, is that even the pets that leave this world actually make it back together with us in spirit and on the other side.
They love their dog. That's amazing. Matt, first of all, thank you. MeetMattFrasercom. Are there any particular places, if someone does want to go to one of these Zoom readings, where should they check out on your website?
Oh, just go right to the live event page. There's live events and also online readings as well. And, you know, they're both equally the same. You know, a lot of people attend week to week because they just love it. Even if they hear a message and then, you know, connect with someone they love, a lot of people keep coming back because, like I said, it's just so amazing. You never know what's going to happen, and every single event is different.
Check it out. Matt, thank you so much. And thanks, everyone.
What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. And right now, I'm feeling like $100 grand.